So thank you everybody for showing up. This is Dr. Sean Yoder, and today we're doing EC201. We're doing Chapter 2. So today we're covering comparative advantage and production possibilities frontiers. All right. So last time we talked about 4 main metrics by which we evaluate economic outcomes. We talked about efficiency, equity, we talked about growth and stability. Today we're focusing on efficiency. We're trying to build over the next few chapters tools by which we evaluate efficiency. Now, in order to be efficient in an economy, there are 3 domains you have to be efficient in. Now, every single society, be it a big country, a small country, doesn't matter how you organize your economic system, every country has to answer 3 basic questions. What gets made in the country? How do you produce or make stuff? And then who gets whatever gets made? So all 3 of these questions have to be asked. But first, let's get through some terms that you're going to hear throughout the course of this class, just so that they make a little bit of sense. The first term is this idea of capital. Now, capital, I want you to be careful with this term, especially business majors. Capital to an economist is a little different. To an economist, capital means tools. So not necessarily money. Now, you can use money to buy capital. For example, I'm using a brand new set of headphones that are a little better to do this recording. That's a piece of capital to us. Now, I used money to buy the headphones, but still the headphones are a piece of capital. So depending on your industry, if you're listening to me on your cell phone or you're watching on your computer, that's capital. If you are a farmer, the plow, the combine, that's capital. Old school, your rake, your hoe, your shovel, your donkey, that would be considered capital. Okay? Buildings often are considered capital. Now, in some business classes, they like to list 4 factors of production. In economics, we have 3. Factors of production are inputs into the production process. So you see inputs right here, and you see factors of production. Now, in economics, we use 3. The 3 we use are land, or natural resources. So this includes water, this includes agricultural outcomes, this includes the physical dirt. Land, the second is labor, people, how much work people actually do. And the third is capital or tools, land, labor, and capital. These are the 3 major things economists use and evaluate whenever they are doing economics. Now, some BA 101 classes add a 4th, and they call it entrepreneurship, because all business classes worship at the altar of the god of entrepreneurship. Ha, 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 ha. Okay. However, in economics, we believe entrepreneurs are people too. So we count them as a version of labor. It saves us a whole round of mathematical equations in the advanced levels. There are separate, more complicated models for entrepreneurial economics, but in general, for 201, we're only going to use 3, land, labor, and capital. So production is where you take combinations of land, labor, and capital, mix them together to make something useful. Now, for example, on mornings which I teach, I go to a business that takes some agricultural products from Southeast Asia, some water, some electricity, labor from an employee, and the use of a machine, and mixes together I lovingly call it the anti-student abuse nectar, AKA my cup of coffee in the morning at Starbucks. That is production. Starbucks takes all those, puts them together, and makes my cup of coffee, and that is, believe me, very useful. And, you know, one year for Lent, I gave up my Starbucks coffee. At the end of that term, my students declared that there is no way in the world I'm ever allowed to do that again. So literally, it's best for everybody that I have my coffee in the morning. Outputs, these are goods and services. So inputs would have been the coffee beans, the water, the electricity, the labor, the effort from the employee, the use of the barista, or the use of the espresso machine. The output would be my cup of coffee. Okay. So every society has to answer a few basic questions. What gets produced? So if you've got to make the correct quantities of stuff. If you make too much or too little, your economy is not efficient. How do you make it? You can make it well, or you can make it badly. If you make it badly, you're not efficient. And then who gets what's produced? So even if you make the correct quantity of stuff, even if you make that stuff well, if you get the stuff to the wrong place, you've got a problem. Now, if I was in class, I would literally be wearing one of these. It is my personal opinion, everybody needs a minimum of 2 of these at all times. One on their person just in case of emergency, and one in a secure drop location in order to go incognito. Now, if all we made were these and we never made food, Starbucks coffee, or headphones, video games, so that would probably be inefficient. I think you can see how making too much of something can be inefficient. We're going to have more examples of that later on in the term. So, how it's produced? Well, consider electricity generation right now. You're listening to this lecture on a computer, or a cell phone, or tablet, some kind of audio playback and video, possibly video playback device that's using electricity. So let's assume away question 1. Let's say we know how much needs to be produced. Now, we could generate that electricity a couple different ways. We can do it ourselves. Last night, I was watching this new show on Amazon Prime with Tori Belleci, one of the guys from Mythbusters, and Richard Hammond, a British actor, about cars, and they were talking about electricity generation on a supposedly deserted island and how they generate electricity. We could do this a couple different ways. We can have everybody, we can make it with hydroelectric or even a normal power plant with coal or oil or steam or solar. Or what we could do is we could give everybody hand cranks, right? Everybody could just go to town, and you could spend all day cranking on this hand crank to get enough electricity to listen to about 5 minutes of my lecture. What could possibly go wrong there? With everything you can make it efficiently or inefficiently. If you make it inefficiently, then your economy is not efficient. Then lastly, who gets what's produced? Now, if I was in front of you, how do I phrase this delicately? I'm a well-rounded economics professor. So I would say, if I had a bunch of pantyhose, that would probably be inefficient because I have no need of pantyhose. You do not need to imagine me in pantyhose, at which point I would look at the grimace of everybody in the class and I said, do not imagine me in pantyhose. It's really not a good idea. And this would be a comedic term for everybody. But as you cannot see me, mercifully, I have turned off my camera to A, prevent my camera from blowing up, and B, to prevent your screens from fracturing. Let me tell you a story. This will help. Many years ago, there was an earthquake off the coast of Japan. And this earthquake generated a small wave. And by small, I mean a tidal wave. And the tidal wave came ashore on the Fukushima prefecture of Japan. Lamentably, the Japanese had built a nuclear reactor in front of said tidal wave. Note to self, do not build nuclear reactors in front of tidal waves. However, the Japanese lamentably had a nuclear reactor right in front of the tidal wave. The tidal wave came in, blasted through, caused the nuclear reactor to melt down, a bunch of radiation spewed into the air, and the Japanese have glow-in-the-dark kids. I'm totally lying about that part. They do not have glow-in-the-dark kids. But my academics, no, I'm totally lying. They do not have glow-in-the-dark kids. But the rest, yes, it did spew a bunch of radiation into the air. And that kind of radiation can hurt you. It can damage you. It's not a good thing. And that kind of radiation causes all kinds of problems. But there is a treatment for it. Iodine pills. If you take, it's a pill, you take it, and it can protect your internal organs from radiation poisoning. Now, at the time of the Fukushima nuclear reactor meltdown, a large quantity of the world's supply of iodine pills was diverted away from East Asia to the western coast of North America, because apparently a bunch of people on the western coast of North America were so afraid of radiation poisoning coming over the Pacific Ocean in quantities that would do them harm that they bought up everything in the world. Meanwhile, the Japanese, who are living next to this nuclear reactor and having to evacuate for seclusion zones in the city of Tokyo, and there weren't enough to go. We had to do emergency runs of iodine pills. I would argue that this is potentially inefficient. As I'm recording this, we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel of the COVID world. There's all kinds of examples of inefficient allocation of resources in the COVID world. You know, we now delineate time into three phases. There's BC, before COVID, C for COVID, and PC for post-COVID. Well, in the C world, in the COVID world, there was all kinds of really horrible allocation problems. If you make the right stuff and you make it efficiently, but you get it to the wrong people, you're inefficient. Now, these questions of what to make and how to make it are present in every single economy, even an economy of just one person. Now, we call this exercise the Robinson Crusoe economy. For those of you who have not read the book Robinson Crusoe, basically Robinson Crusoe gets shipwrecked on a seemingly at the time deserted island. So imagine you're flying over the ocean, the plane goes down. You survive, everything's attached, that's a +2. However, everybody else is dead. Well, sucks to be them. What do you need? Well, you need food, you need water, you need shelter. Okay. Signaling, because they're probably going to come looking for you. All right. In economics, we have two separate ways of measuring cost, two distinctly different ways. The first way is in terms of the scarce resource. Now, in a Robinson Crusoe economy, money isn't a scarce resource because you can call whatever you want money and pay yourself whatever you want and buy whatever you want from yourself, so who cares? But daylight hours and time is a scarce resource. So you could measure the cost of everything in terms of time. It could maybe take 6 hours to build your shelter or 2 hours to find and purify a liter of water, right? The second way of measuring cost is in terms of the opportunity cost. So consider the shelter for a minute. If the shelter costs 6 hours to make, method 1, and water, method 1, took 2 hours for a liter of water. The shelter, method 1, takes 6 hours, or method 2 costs me 3 liters of water. 6 hours per shelter and there's 2 liters of, or 2 hours per liter of water. 6 divided by 2 is 3, so that's 3 liters of water. So building my shelter costs me 3 liters of water. This is the idea of opportunity costs. Now, Professor Yoder, why do we need a second way of measuring cost? Well, whenever you look at the cost of a good, be it in terms of money or a business opportunity or anything, yes, there's the absolute cost, but human behavior tends to be driven by opportunity cost. Human behavior tends to be driven by opportunity cost. It's not just the physical cost that's involved. So as you're thinking and working through things, remember, opportunity cost matters. I'll have more stories on this later on in the term. So when we're talking about efficiency, there's a guy who was really thinking about efficiency. His name was David Ricardo. Now, the discipline of economics is dominated by a bunch of old, dead, mostly British white guys. Not exclusively, there are plenty of exceptions, but for the most part, a bunch of old, dead British white guys. So this is our first old, dead British white guy, David Ricardo. If you're ever writing a paper for me, you're always welcome to refer to him as just dead guy number 1, and I'll know who you're talking about. Dead guy number 1 had this epiphany. And the idea was, when does it make sense to work together versus do your own thing? Now, this is getting to this idea of trade in an economy. Now, there's a lot of terms here. I'll work you through it. Hang in there. The first idea makes sense to almost everybody, and it's called absolute advantage. Now, absolute advantage works like this. If you're better at one thing, making one thing, and I'm better at making another, rather than us both do both things, you do what you're good at, I'll do what I'm good at, and then we'll trade in the middle. That makes perfect sense to most people, be it at a country level or a person level. Hey, we don't grow rubber really efficiently. Why don't Southeast Asia countries, you make the rubber, we'll make TV shows and we'll swap. Okay. There you go. Absolute advantage. But here's where David Ricardo, dead guy number 1, caused smoke to come out of everybody's ears for hundreds of years after he's dead. This is why dead guy number 1 is still taught in economics classes at a basic level hundreds of years later. It's called this theory of comparative advantage, and it goes like this. It is in your interest to specialize in trade with a schmo like me, even if you are better and more efficient at everything than I am. How can that be? It's true, but how can it be? So herein we come. Herein we have differences in how we measure cost. So I know the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won the Super Bowl this last year with Tom Brady. I am a New England Patriots fan. I've lived in Maine forever, graduated college in Maine, et cetera, et cetera. So I still consider Tom Brady a New England Patriot. Yeah, I'm still in denial, guys. Give your, call it COVID insanity, I guess. But for years at Gillette Stadium in Foxborough, Massachusetts, the number 1 person who could throw the most touchdown passes for the New England Patriots was Tom Brady. And he would throw on average about 3 a game. By contrast, if you think about it, the number one person who could sell the most hot dogs in the game is also Tom Brady. Think about it. You're sitting in the stands. Tom Brady walks down. Hot dogs, get your hot dogs here, hot dogs. Right? If I didn't want a hot dog, I do now. Hell, Tom Brady's selling it. Hey, would you mind signing that on there? Yeah. Nice thing about Tom Brady selling hot dogs is you don't even have to cook them. He could just throw them at you. No heat in flight. I mean, honestly, he wouldn't even have to walk down the stand. Tom Brady selling hot dogs, section 430. Stands are empty. Everybody rushing, right? Tom Brady has absolute advantage in the selling of hot dogs. He also has absolute advantage in the throwing of touchdown passes. Now, by contrast, I would say Tom Brady could easily, if he's walking stands, sell 450, we'll say 600. 600 hot dogs in the game, right? That's about 150 a quarter for 4 quarters. I think that's reasonable for Tom. By my standard, if I did 150 in a game, 50 hot dogs in an entire game, walking up and down, back and forth, I think I'd be doing well, right? 150 a game, pretty good work. Now, for me, Tom Brady throws 3 touchdown passes a game. Now, for me, you know, I have these, call them delusional dreams, you know. If I was ever quarterbacking for the New England Patriots, you know, I'd be standing under center. Hut, hut, hut! They'd snap me the ball. And the second the ball gets in my hands, I would have this epiphany. Men larger in size than refrigerators, a whole army of them, are coming to my exact physical location to do me mass, unspeakable quantities of harm. If they get me, they will pile drive me into the ground, and they will need A, not just the stretcher, but B, a crowbar in order to pry me out of the indentation of the turf that these guys are going to put me into. So if I get snapped the ball, let's be honest with ourselves. I'm running for my life. Ah! Right? I am de-assing the area with quickness. Now, I'll be honest with you guys. I can't throw if my life depended on it. I really can't. I'm a horrible throw. It's a running joke. So, if I try to throw a pass, it's horrible. Now, in my wildest delusional dream, as I am running for my life, Ron Gronkowski, affectionately known as Gronk, happens to be running a drag route. Drag route is where you run forward about 2-3 steps, turn, and then run parallel to the line of scrimmage. It's a very, very short pass. He's running a drag route kind of mirroring what I'm doing. Basically, it's a bootleg is the play for those of you who speak fluent football. And I flip him the ball. Of the epiphany that if he has the ball, these men larger than refrigerators will not kill me. Now, Gronk's a freak of nature. Once he gets the ball, God only knows what happens, and he can easily score. So maybe one time in 10 years, I might be able to throw a touchdown pass. Tom Brady has absolute advantage in the selling of hot dogs. Tom Brady has absolute advantage in the throwing of touchdown passes. However, Tom Brady does not have comparative advantage in both. So how many hot dogs does it cost Tom Brady to throw touchdown passes? Well, if he sells 600 hot dogs in the game, and he can throw 3 touchdown passes in the game, 600 divided by 3 is 200 hot dogs. So each touchdown pass costs 200 hot dogs. Now, I only do 150 hot dogs in the game. However, it takes me 10 years. So at 8 home games, 150. So let's do that. Let's go. Hold on a second. Let's do the math here. There we go. Let's do that math. All right, so let's go to the calculator, right? No, that's calendar. Wow, that's a complete fail. I meant calculator, not calendar. Wow, calculator. There we go. So 150 a game times 8 games a year times 10 years is equal to 12,000 hot dogs. So it would cost me 12,000 hot dogs to throw a touchdown pass, whereas it costs Brady 200. Tom Brady has the lower cost if measured in hot dogs. But now let's flip that on its head. Again, we're doing comparative advantage. How many touchdown passes does it cost to sell hot dogs? So if Tom Brady sells 600 hot dogs in the game, okay, that costs 3 touchdown passes. For me to sell 600 hot dogs, that would take me at 150 a game, 4 games. But in 4 games, how many hot dogs or how many touchdown passes am I giving up? Professor Yoder, 0 times any number is still, yeah, I know. The answer is effectively 0.00000, right? Effectively 0. I have comparative advantage in selling hot dogs. So even though Tom Brady is better at it, it is most efficient for Tom Brady to throw the touchdowns and Professor Yoder to sell the hot dogs. Let's nerd this up. Let me show you how this works. Here we have 2 people. We have Colleen and Bill, and they each, and this is important, guys, we're going to need this later. That Colleen and Bill each want to consume an equal number of logs and food. So make sure you remember that. So if they do their own thing, by themselves, Colleen generates, working flat out for an entire day, come on, there we go, 5 logs of wood and 5 bushels of food. Bill, working flat out for an entire day, generates 2 2/3 logs of wood and 2 2/3 bushels of food. Who has absolute advantage in the production of wood? Colleen. Who has absolute advantage in the production of food? Colleen. So that means Bill should just prop his feet up and watch March Madness or the football game while Colleen does all the work, right? Because she's better at everything? Okay. Guys, you're supposed to say, no, Professor, this is called a trap. This is why you come to class, you learn these things. That's called a trap. The answer is, no, Professor Yoder, Bill needs to be doing his share of the work too. Okay. Notice you add them together. This 2-person economy generates 7 2/3 logs of wood and 7 2/3 bushels of food. Now, they are working efficiently. They're working flat out as hard as they can. They're not taking time off, not sloughing off. They're working flat out. What's the resource being used? We would call it 2-person days. That's 2 people working for 1 day each. But notice what happens if they specialize. If they specialize working 2-person days, Colleen can generate 10 logs of wood and Bill can generate 8 bushels of food. Notice the economy under specialization is now producing more logs and more food than it was with them doing their own thing. This is called a production possibility frontier. We'll start with the one on the left for Colleen. Colleen could choose to produce at point A at 10 logs of food. Here we have logs on the y-axis and bushels of food on the x-axis. Colleen could choose to produce 10 logs of food and 0 bushels, or 10 logs and 0 bushels of food at point A. Or Colleen could choose point B at 10 bushels of food and 0 logs. But remember, Colleen wanted half and half, so she would choose here at point C at 5 bushels of food and 5 logs. 5 bushels of food, 5 logs. Bill, by contrast, could do 4 bushels or 4 logs in a day. Notice Colleen could do more. And Bill can also, down here, do 8 bushels of food. Colleen can do more. Bill would choose point F at 2 2/3 each. Right? But so as long as you're on this line, you are question 2. How are you making it? You are efficient. You are producing as efficiently as you can. Question 1, what should be made? That depends on, okay, I really want to be here, or I really want to be there. That's the allocation question. Now, if you are inside this PPF boundary, you're producing, but you're inefficient. You could make more. If you're on the line, you're efficient. If you're outside the line, you just can't do it. It's not feasible. It's not possible by yourself. So Colleen was constrained here to 5 and 5. But because of gains from trade, Colleen could actually get to consume outside of her boundaries. This is called a production possibility frontier. We use these in all of society. It shows trades off. Now, I was showing you a nice linear one for a person productively. There's all kinds. Now, your textbook authors, in deference to the business schools, you can make consumer goods and capital goods are tools. So if you make tools, it can help you produce more things. So right now I'm recording a lecture for you to listen to. I am investing my time and I'm conducting investment to make a new tool, AKA a recording of a lecture, that I can use to do educational services in the future. So I'm in the act of creating capital good and investing right now. Consumer goods, think my Starbucks coffee. And the textbook authors likes to put consumer goods and capital goods for a point they're going to make later in the chapter. Guys, you can use any 2 goods on a PPF. When I was in school, it was guns and butter because they were illustrating, my book was written by the World War II generation, and so they were illustrating the trade-offs during the war effort, but World War II was so long ago that most American students don't really care. But you can use any 2 things. So I'm going to do some professorial discretion and mix this up. Now, we've done the 1-person Robinson Crusoe economy. Now let's do a 2-person economy. And the 2 people in my economy are these guys, Bill Gates and Michael Jordan. And if you have never seen Michael Jordan do this in person, dude, the man can fly. Let's just be clear, the dude can fly. Straight up, dude flies. And he does. So we can put any 2 things on a PPF. So down here I'm going to have basketball shots made. And up here I'm going to have lines of computer code written. So we could have, start down here at point B. Michael Jordan's doing his whoosh thing, flying, and everybody's going, watching Michael fly, shooting hoops, right? Or we could have, Bill Gates walks in, and he kind of grainy shots the basket. Dude will get there eventually to make baskets, right? Or we could go up here to point A. Bill Gates walks in, sits down in the chair, headphones on, Moment of zen, and then, and the lines of code stream down the computer screen like the Matrix, right? Michael Jordan walks in, adjusts the chair. Dude's tall, ergonomic, safety first. Sits down, and then click, 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 click. You know, the hunt and peck typing strategy? Click, 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 click. Okay. So you got two people in the comment. Let's assume we start up here at point A. Michael Jordan and Bill Gates are both in the computer lab writing computer code. And society comes back and says, we need more basketball shots made. We need more hoops to be made. Who is the person we send out of the computer lab down to the gym to go shoot hoops? Bill Gates, right? No, of course not. You send Michael Jordan. Why do you send Michael Jordan? Because if Michael Jordan goes to the gym, we get a whole lot of basketball shots. And we're not giving up very much computer code because the dude can't write computer code very fast. And only if we absolutely had to would we take Bill Gates out of the lab and send him to the gym. Why? Because when we take Bill Gates out, we lose loads of computer code and we're not getting very many shots for it. Now take the same argument and let's now extrapolate this argument. So let's take everybody at the college. We're going to line them up in the field or at the on the athletic field, right? But instead of lining them up oldest to youngest or tallest to shortest, we're going to, on one end, we're going to have the jockiest, and on the other end, we're going to have the nerdiest. So Michael Jordan's on the left as King Jock. Bill Gates is on the other end as King Nerd. I got to go over with the nerds and my peeps, right? And we line up jockiest to nerdiest. So by lining up jockiest to nerdiest, so the person in the middle is like half jock, half nerd. So the first King Nerd, Bill, goes to the lab, and then Michael goes to the gym, and then we just allocate until we get to someplace like F, right? Now, if we're at F, society comes back and says, we want more shots being made. What do? We go to the computer lab, we find the jockiest of the people left in the lab and send them down. Why? Because we're giving up the least amount of code and getting more shots, the most shots possible for the least code given. And as we keep getting more and more shots, we're having to give up more and more code each time. So as we move down this curve, we're giving up more and more code each time, and we're getting fewer and fewer additional shots. This is called increasing opportunity cost. So the PPF has this bowed out, this is a mathematically concave shape due to increasing opportunity costs due to specialized resources. Why does it have this curve shape? It's got this curve shape because not everybody is as suited to the same task as everyone else. The PPF has a bowed out, mathematically concave shape, demonstrating increasing opportunity costs due to specialized resources. The PPF has a bowed out, mathematically concave shape, demonstrating increasing opportunity costs due to specialized resources. Now, notice that's a negative slope and it's curved. The slope of the PPF is always changing because it's a curved line, and this is called, has a special name, it's the MRT, marginal rate of transformation. Now, at this point in the lecture, in the BC, before COVID world, I would say, oh yeah, we used to use this during World War II in an emergency, and when I used to use Detroit and the airplanes, and how the Detroit manufacturers had to switch airplanes. Yeah, no, we've got a C example now. For example, General Electric changed all kinds of their production and started making ventilators. LL Bean Corporation, that used to make boots and canvas bags for the beach, started making personal protective equipment. That is the use of the United States MRT when the Defense Production Act was invoked, saying we need this more as a society, we are hereby, this has got to change. What did we give up? We gave up canvas beach bags, we gave up boots, we gave up air conditioners, we gave up all kinds of things in order to get ventilators, in order to get personal protective equipment for healthcare workers, in order to get what we needed for an emergency. Okay, so that is the use of the MRT. It is important in societies. The MRT is a critical tool. Now here we have a new graph. So let me walk you through this. Here we have bushels of wheat per year, and here we have bushels of corn. Now this is the combined production of wheat and corn for 2 U.S. states. These are the states of Ohio and Kansas. For those of you who have not had the mispleasure of driving Interstate 70 through the state of Kansas, they are very proud of their wheat. And about every few miles, especially if you're driving I-70 towards the east and have just come through Colorado and are in Jackson County, Kansas, they will be glad to inform you of how many farmers or how many people each Kansas farmer feeds in the world in addition to themselves. They're very proud of their wheat. And in Ohio, corn is, the farmers there are very proud of their corn, to the point that if you diminish a man's corn in Ohio, you better be prepared to defend yourself because there will be a fight. Now, just a second ago, I gave you the argument that the PPF was bowed out due to specialized resources, and the argument I gave you was specialized labor. That argument extrapolates to the other factors of production, land, and also capital, not just labor. In this case, the dirt in Ohio is better suited for growing corn, and the dirt in Kansas is better suited for growing wheat. So why is it bowed out? Because of, in this case, a specialized resource, but in this case, land. Now, you can have if you're inside here, you're inefficient. Remember, you can, if you're inside, you are not efficient, question 2. If you're on the line, question 2, you're efficient. So what causes inefficiency? Well, unemployment. If you are unemployed in an economy and there are people who want to work, if you put people to work, then you can produce more. Okay, that's kind of makes sense. If you have people sitting around in your business doing nothing, if you give them something to do, you're producing more. There you go. I love this. Inefficiency is inefficient. Guys, don't overthink this. This isn't waste and mismanagement, fraud and abuse. No, okay. Let me give you an example. I do consulting a lot for businesses. Sometimes businesses like to hire economists who come and, you get the guided tour of the management and you see what's going on. You write up a report and make recommendations of ways they can improve. And the business had an assembly line approach. And the best way I'm going to illustrate this to you is imagine, and it wasn't this business, but imagine Jimmy John's. Jimmy John's is a sandwich shop, and their motto is freaky fast, and it is fast. You stand up at Jimmy John's counter, you order your sandwich, you pay for the sandwich. By the time you're done paying, the sandwich is popping out the back end of the assembly line. It is fast beyond measure. And if you ever watch them, they have one person with the bread, they slice it, another person, another person, another person. They just assembly line all the way down to get it done. So at this business, I was watching an assembly line style operation. People were in a row. One person was adding something to what they were making, and then it moved it down. Next person was adding something. Now, when they ran out of the consumable parts that they were doing, They turned around, walked a couple steps behind them to the shelf where the spares were, and they would grab items from the shelf. Now, one of these employees was tall, the other was short. The tall employee would turn around, go over to the shelf, reach down, and grab what he needed from the bottom shelf. By contrast, the short employee, when he was done, would turn around, go over to the shelf, have to grab a step stool because his stuff was light and it was up on the top shelf. So he'd grab the step stool, climb up it, grab his stuff, climb down, put it back in his workstation, and then put the stool away. And I'm watching this, and I asked the manager, are these specialized tasks? Are they specially trained or unable to do each other's jobs? And oh, no. They can do each other's jobs. And I go, okay, can you have those two switch? And I go, yeah, I guess. And they switched. Now the short person was getting their resupply from the bottom shelf, and the tall person was reaching the top shelf. Okay, what was the efficiency gain? In this case, the efficiency gain was the step stool. Now that piece of capital, the step stool, is no longer required for their jobs and could be sold, rented, redeployed, etc. That's inefficiency. That's what happens when it's not, you could call it mismanagement of an individual firm, or it's not as nefarious as that. But in this case, it's just, hey, swap, and you can measure the efficiencies, guys, in concrete terms. In this case, it was something little. It was just a step stool. But a lot of times, efficiency gains are a lot bigger. So what happens when you deal with the efficiency gains? PPF moves towards the boundary. What happens when unemployment goes down? You move towards the boundary. What happens when unemployment goes up? You move towards the origin. What happens when stuff is misallocated? You move away from the boundary. Notice the boundary isn't moving itself. You're just, the point at which you're at moves towards the boundary or away from it. But Professor Yoder, what can cause the boundary itself to move? Well, remember, the boundary represents, theoretically, the total predictive capacity, the maximum amount you can actually do. As a result of that, in order to have the boundary move, you have to grow. Now, please note, we're only answering question 2. If you're on the boundary, question 2, are you producing correctly? How are you producing it? You're efficient. In order to be efficient fully, remember, you have to be making exactly what you're supposed to make, question 1. And in this case, for question 1, we don't know on this graph which of these combinations is the actual correct allocation. Now, growth shifts the boundary. So here we go. Here's the PPF in 1950, 1975, 2009. What happened? There were new fertilizer, new farming techniques, so you can get more using the same resources, or you have new resources. Now, the United States hasn't acquired more dirt. The state of Ohio and the state of Kansas have not gotten bigger. So this is not a new resource argument here. This is better farming techniques, primarily different seed strains, etc. Now, it looks like the economic growth here has been more suited to corn than it has to wheat, but there's been growth in each. This causes economic growth. So growth is moving the productive capacity. So what causes economic growth? A, new resources, more dirt, more oil, more labor. If people are moving into your country can grow and produce more. If people are moving away from your country can shrink. It matters. Technology. Henry Ford in the assembly line. Same people, same number of tools, new way of doing it, bam, you're making more. There you go. Now, this argument is a macro argument. Capital goods in poor and rich countries. Why do poor countries grow slowly? The argument is it's because they don't make many capital goods versus rich countries do. And for those of you who take EC202, I'll be glad to explain this to you, but this is definitely not something I'm going to get into right now. But we're back to our three basic questions. What do we make? How do we make it? And who gets what's made? Every society has to answer it. One way of answering it is a command economy, in which case the government, either directly or indirectly, sets all the targets, incomes, prices, determines, answers every question. You are making 10 loaves of bread today. You will receive one jacket. The government answers everything. The other extreme, and by the way, there is no extreme that I can show you of this today. The other extreme is a purely free market economy, again, does not exist today, in which people just act in their own self-interest. So these are two ends of a continuum. Everything's kind of in the middle. But in a market system, prices figure it out. Assuming people can afford it, if you value it at the price, you buy it. If you don't, you don't. So that allocates who gets what, based upon how much is made. Now, do you guys remember those old Nokia phones from like the 1990s? But you may not. You might see them occasionally. Good God, they can't give those things away anymore. Why? Nobody wants them. Whereas an iPhone costs officially your firstborn child, like several $1,000s. What is society saying? It's telling Apple we want more of those. It's telling Nokia with those old phones, no mas, be good. Right? Price is answering what to make. It's sending signals to businesses. Make more of this, make less of that. When you are choosing what to do or how to do it, price answers all the questions in the economy automatically. Whereas price answers all the questions in the economy automatically. Whereas under a command system, everything is answered manually. In the end, every real system in the world is mixed. The United States has command elements to it. North Korea has market elements to it, which is the closest we have to a pure command economy. There are not, the old Soviet Union had market elements to it. So there's not pure versions of either. So that's all for today. Thank you very much for listening. Please feel free to stop by office hours or give me a call if you have questions, and hope you have a wonderful day.